as the last echoes of gunfire faded in Baghdad in December 2003. Coalition Administrator Paul Bremer strode before journalists and declared, "Ladies and gentlemen, we got him." Nearly 9 months after his regime had collapsed, Saddam Hussein had been captured. The tyrant was gone and the world held its breath. Yet removing Saddam would not silence Iraq's turmoil. It was merely the opening act of a much longer drama. Fast forward to early August 2004, and global attention moved to Najaf, a city of shimmering golden domes and ancient burial grounds, revered by millions of Shia Muslims. Yet beneath its sacred beauty lay an anxious hush. Children returned from school under armed patrols, shopkeepers closed early, and whispered rumours of yet another conflict drifted through the narrow streets. This is the third holiest city in Shia Islam, and home to the Imam Ali Shrine and the world's largest cemetery, Wadi Us-Salam. But beneath its mosque's gilded dome, militia fighters have dug in, ready for battle and ready to defend the city with faith as their shield. This is the story of Najaf in the summer of 2004, a place where the spiritual heartbeat of a nation met the harsh drum of war. When historians look back, they will see not just a battle, but a turning point. The moment that a shrine became a landmark in Iraq's unfolding conflict. Welcome to Wars of the World. In the aftermath of the US-led invasion in March 2003 and the swift fall of Saddam Hussein's regime in April, Iraq descended into a vacuum of authority. The Coalition Provisional Authority, or CPA, led by Ambassador Paul Bremer, disbanded the Iraqi army and purged the Ba'athist Party, moves that left the country fragmented, destabilized and reliant on foreign troops. The palpable collapse of security institutions and the breakdown of law and order sowed the seeds for a new insurgency, both Sunni and Shia in character. Among the rising adherents of the Shia resistance was Muqtada al-Sadr, a 29-year-old cleric from Najaf, son of the assassinated Grand Ayatollah Mohammad Sadiq al-Sadr. After finishing formative studies in the city's Hawza, he launched his political faction through the office of the Martyr Sadr in mid-2003, rapidly establishing influence in poorer Shia districts, most notably Sadr City in Baghdad. In June 2003, al-Sadr founded the Mahdi Army, also known as Jaish al-Mahdi or JAM, initially a few hundred seminary students turned vigilantes. Their charter was simple: resist the occupation and fill the governmental void left by coalition forces. By 2004, however, they had become the dominant Shia militia, notable for their ideology combining Iraqi nationalism, religious zeal and grassroots populism. Tensions came to a head in spring 2004 when Bremer shut down al-Sadr's newspaper Al-Hawza on March 28th and ordered the arrest of key figures. The cleric responded, quote, "America has unsheathed its fangs and its despicable intentions, and the conscientious Iraqi people cannot remain silent at all. They must defend their rights in the ways they see fit." End quote. Following his condemnation, the Mahdi army launched an uprising from the 4th of April, targeting cities such as Najaf, Kufa, Kut, Basra and Sadr City. On the streets, they seized police stations and government buildings and engaged US forces in pitched battles. In Sadr City, American troops were ambushed, with 8 US troops being killed and 51 more being wounded during attempts to retake police stations. The insurrection spread swiftly, with Mahdi fighters taking partial control of Karbala and Najaf, cutting supply highways with ambushes on convoys. The CPA's authority was deeply shaken. and a fragile truce was patched together by early June. This first uprising not only inflicted heavy casualties, but also shattered any remaining illusion that Iraq could be stabilized under US auspices. Molly Bingham, reporting for Vanity Fair, observed how the insurgents were unexpectedly diverse. Quote, "While some certainly are veterans of Saddam's 400,000-man military, others I met included a teacher, a wife, a mother, a mechanic, a truck driver, and a PhD holder." End quote. This diverse mix of resistance fighters shows the breadth of influence that the movement had, with many people being brought together and motivated by their shared beliefs in Islam and a deep sense of national pride. By late June, the truce had collapsed. Al-Sadr's forces withdrew, but only temporarily. A brief calm followed, a deceptive respite that lulled the coalition into believing that the worst had passed. This brief interlude, however, saw the Mahdi army regroup and rearm, solidifying its presence in Najaf and other key cities. The stage was now set. Najaf, a city both sacred and strategic, lay at the epicenter of this renewed confrontation. The stage would soon shift from political wrangling to urban warfare, as threats to both power and piety converged on the city's hallowed streets. It is important to consider that the city of Najaf is more than just a battlefield. It is the beating heart of Shia Islam. Revered as the burial site of Ali ibn Abi Talib, Prophet Muhammad's cousin and the first Shia Imam, Najaf stands as the third holiest city for Shia Muslims, trailing only Mecca and Medina in spiritual significance. At its center lies the gilded Imam Ali Shrine, a sprawling mausoleum crowned with golden domes and revered across the Islamic world. Year after year, it draws millions of pilgrims, transforming Najaf into an epicenter of faith and theology. Enveloping this shrine sprawls Wadi Salam, or the Valley of Peace, the largest cemetery on earth. It covers some 1,485 acres and hosts over 6 million burials. For 14 centuries, this necropolis has stood as a testament to human devotion and death. But in 2004, it became something far more foreboding. Mahdi army fighters seized the labyrinth of mausoleums, tunnels and crypts, converting them into hidden strongholds. This shadowy occupation represented both a strategic and symbolic blow. Militarily, Wadi Salam offered maze-like cover and subterranean passageways ideally suited to guerrilla tactics. Both religiously and politically, embedding the militia within holy ground placed any potential assault on this hallowed territory under intense scrutiny. On one side loomed the Mahdi army, under the fiery leadership of Muqtada al-Sadr, bolstered by fighters in Najaf, estimated between 2,000 and 15,000. The militia had, by mid-2004, not only armed itself, but also had embedded itself within the city's fabric, planting checkpoints and serving as a quasi-governing force. On the other side stood a coalition caught in a political and moral vice. US Marines, backed by Iraqi National Guard units, needed to clear hostile forces while preserving the sanctity of the Imam Ali Shrine. Coalition planners recognized that any damage to the shrine could inflame regional passions and derail their legitimacy. Yet doing nothing risked surrendering territory and emboldening Shia militias elsewhere. By July 31, 2004, the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit assumed control under the Polish-led Multinational Division Central South, inheriting a tense standoff between al-Sadr's forces and the interim Iraqi government. Patrols by small American teams around key checkpoints, such as the maternity clinic near al-Sadr's residence, frequently erupted into firefights near the cemetery's fringes, foreshadowing the violence to come. Meanwhile, Najaf's citizens lived in the shadow of uncertainty. Pilgrims still made their way to the shrine, shopkeepers kept their shutters open, and religious students continued their studies in hushed tones. But there was an edge in the air. Skirmishes flared on the outskirts of the cemetery and beyond the shrine's perimeter, but few believed that the calm would last. Rumours moved faster than truth, and with every passing day, the possibility of a larger clash loomed over the ancient city. The Mahdi army dug in deeper. Fighters appeared in alleyways and rooftops, at checkpoints and in mosques, their movements often watched, but rarely challenged. Coalition patrols passed through tense streets, lined with murals of al-Sadr, their presence resented by some and feared by many. It was a stalemate drawn in sacred stone and cemetery dust, each side waiting for the other to make a decisive move. On the 5th of August 2004, the uneasy calm was shattered. In the early hours, the Mahdi army launched a pre-dawn attack on a local police station, signalling the end of the ceasefire and triggering major clashes with coalition forces. A US Marine Quick Reaction Force, or QRF, was dispatched in seconds by the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, responding under orders from the governor of Najaf. Around 11 AM, fighting erupted near the Wadi us-Salam cemetery, where fighters had entrenched themselves among mausoleums and catacombs. The complex underground layout offered the Mahdi army ideal cover for urban guerrilla warfare. Marines described it as, quote, jungle warfare without the jungle, end quote. Under intense fire from mortars, RPGs and machine guns, the QRF pressed forward, but had to withdraw once ammunition ran low. The initial clash claimed over 70 insurgent casualties, along with one wounded Marine. Reinforcements arrived on August 7th, with US Army units from the 1st, 2nd and 5th Battalions, as well as the 7th Cavalry, moving into the cemetery to support the Marines. What followed was a grinding subterranean battle. Tanks and Bradleys squeezed through tight cemetery lanes, while dismounted infantry cleared tomb after tomb, tunnel after tunnel. Precision airstrikes and close air support, whether from UH-1N helicopters or the looming threat of AC-130 gunships, supported the assault, though full airstrikes were seen as a taboo anywhere near the Imam Ali shrine. Despite the grimmest of conditions, Marine discipline under tight rules of engagement held firm, though tanks and Bradleys were sometimes ordered to hold their fire, particularly within 500 meters of the shrine. The ferocity of combat often tested their restraint. By August 12th, coalition forces struck at al-Sadr's own stronghold, his house, adjacent hospital, and related buildings. Charlie Company Marines forced entry into the hospital and into the cleric's residence. A sharp firefight erupted at the school nearby, where Iraqi National Guard units who were ordered forward faltered under intense militiamen ambushes. The cemetery fight escalated further on August 15th, when insurgents attacked a US tank with small arms at point-blank range. This led to the deaths of Lieutenant James Goines and Specialist Mark Zabata. Coalition armor crews were so cautious that some commanders had to restrain Bradleys from firing on suspected enemy positions within the cemetery. Night raids were pushed out to Kufa, striking at militia bases, such as a technical college. AC-130 and allied helicopters decimated enemy positions, with one raid leaving 73 insurgents killed and over 100 wounded, with minimal coalition casualties. By mid-August, what remained of the Mahdi fighters had fallen back to the sanctuary of the Imam Ali shrine. Coalition forces surrounded them, carving a battered ring of steel, tanks on the perimeter, with infantry and armor moving towards the shrine. But they held off a direct assault due to the strict rules which protected the holy site. By mid-August 2004, the fighting had spiraled into a tense siege. The Mahdi army, battered and outnumbered, had fallen back into the sanctified precincts of the Imam Ali shrine, while coalition forces, US Marines, armored vehicles, and Iraqi National Guard had surrounded the Golden Dome. But a direct assault was unthinkable. This was sacred ground, and any breach would risk an international scandal. Pressure was mounting on every front. Iraqi politicians, from the interim government in Baghdad to Najaf's own governor, worried that destroying the shrine would alienate millions of Shiites. Washington too fretted over regional backlash. Iran, the Gulf states, even the wider Islamic world would not forgive blood spilled on hallowed ground. Into this charged atmosphere stepped Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani, the reigning spiritual authority in Najaf. Fresh from heart surgery in London, he returned to Iraq on the 25th of August, declaring, quote, "I have come for the sake of Najaf, and I will stay in Najaf until the crisis ends." End quote. He didn't arrive alone either. He led a convoy of more than 1,000 civilian vehicles from Basra, accompanied shortly by tens of thousands of supporters marching from Baghdad, Kufa, Karbala, and towns across southern Iraq. These unarmed Shiite demonstrators streamed into Najaf, bypassing coalition checkpoints and flooding towards the shrine's courtyards. Tanks remained in position, but soldiers watched tensely as protesters carried banners of peace and of unity under Sistani's guidance. Akir Hassan, a 63-year-old demonstrator, later said, quote, "This is democracy. This is the new Iraq. This is the greatest defeat we could have inflicted on the Americans. It's the most beautiful day in my life." End quote. The sheer scale of this quiet mobilization transformed the stalemate. A ceasefire was declared. Coalition troops pulled back slightly, and militia fighters were offered safe passage, on condition they surrender their weapons and exit the city. Najaf and Kufa were designated weapons-free zones, manned by Iraqi police under interim Prime Minister Ayad Alawi's government. Negotiations continued into the night. Mahdi army commanders, surrounded and outgunned, faced an injunction from Iraq's most respected cleric. US and Iraqi forces, emboldened by containment but wary of overreach, agreed to a fragile pact. By August 26th, the militia began to withdraw from the shrine, laying down their arms and releasing keys back to the local clerics, a symbolic concession that ended the 3-week siege. For the people of Najaf, it was a moment of extraordinary relief and reverence. The shrine remained intact. The city's spiritual core was preserved. For the coalition, the battle ended not with victory by force, but with a tense victory for diplomacy, one brokered by religious authority, not military might. This was no conventional ceasefire, and it set a new precedent. Respect for religious sanctity could override tactical advantage. It reshaped the rules of urban combat in Iraq, and hinted at the future's uneasy blend of guns, faith, and geopolitics. By the time the ceasefire was announced in late August 2004, Najaf had already endured more than 3 weeks of brutal siege. The Mahdi army, having withdrawn from the shrine under Grand Ayatollah Sistani's authority, began laying down its weapons and exiting in small coordinated convoys. Their retreat marked not just a tactical withdrawal, but a profound change in the nature of the conflict. Control of Najaf shifted back to Iraqi government forces, police and National Guard units, under the watchful protection of US Marines and Iraqi army elements. This was not a victory declared at the barrel of a gun, but a concession shaped by religious authority, public will, and political pragmatism. Despite the cessation of violence, the price had been paid. Estimates suggest that hundreds of Mahdi fighters were killed or wounded, and mosque walls and civilian quarters bore the scars of conflicts, with local infrastructure also being battered. US forces estimated that at least 360 Mahdi fighters were killed and around 260 captured, while coalition forces suffered over 50 killed and around 100 wounded. Najaf itself emerged relatively intact, but barely so, hanging in the balance between defeat and resilience. What followed were tremors that echoed far beyond Najaf's walls. For Muqtada al-Sadr, the battle was both a setback and a stepping stone. His militia may have been forced out of the shrine, but the Mahdi army walked away not broken, but reinforced in prestige among many Shiites, who viewed their stand as a testament to faith confronting firepower. al-Sadr pivoted swiftly from battlefield commander to political contender. By late 2004 and into the 2005 parliamentary elections, he had created a formal political bloc, using the momentum that Najaf had generated. His party joined the United Iraqi Alliance coalition, becoming kingmakers in Baghdad's emerging democracy. However, tensions soon flared as the newly empowered Shia-led government under Nouri al-Maliki moved to assert authority, often clashing with Sadr's followers. Najaf also set a tactical precedent for both US and Iraqi forces. The conflict underscored that urban warfare in religiously significant locations demanded more than bullets and bombs. It required negotiation, compromise, and religious sensitivity. Future operations in places like Sadr City, Basra, and Karbala would echo Najaf's lessons: refuse to assault shrines, anticipate clerical intervention, and expect militia adaptation. Yet much was also unresolved. The Mahdi army retained strength and cohesion. In the years that followed, it played a decisive role, supporting Sunni insurgents in Fallujah, then engaging in sectarian violence after the 2006 Samarra mosque bombing. And while Sadr would periodically order ceasefires, his movement remained a potent force, sometimes ally, sometimes adversary, but never irrelevant. Najaf's battle had been more than a single siege. It was a crucible in which religion, militia politics, US intervention, and Iraqi sovereignty were forged together. It showed that in post-invasion Iraq, true power lay where devotion and determination converged. This fragile mosaic would shape the country's future, its wars, its politics, and the ceaseless dance between holy sites and military objectives.